I grew up in a country where quality brands meant international brands. आज भी थोड़ा दिल को चुभता है. Want to change that very, very soon and want to make sure that Tagz as a brand goes international. Our entire education system, our entire family system today in India basically programs you to be successful. Everybody is basically telling you that you need to be successful. Everybody is trying to be seen as successful. You work with a company, you want to be better than your peer group. I think the early years should be all about failing as often as you do. Why do you see the Unilevers of the world and P&Gs of the world today acquiring many more companies? Simply because these large companies realize that it is impossible to build brands fast enough, relevant enough for these small micro segments at all points in time. It is possibly much faster to acquire a brand which caters to these kind of consumer micro segments.
Performance marketing, e-commerce marketing, content marketing. Is this the world that you see yourself in? If you dream to work in these roles at Hindustan Unilever Limited, here's your chance. Apply to AltUni's certificate program in digital marketing with HUL. The participants achieved a return of 12 times the investment with an 80% average salary hike. Hurry up! Apply now to the program from the link in the description. Limited seats available.
We were very clear that we basically wanted to disrupt some of the largest indulgent snacking markets, and the largest 4 categories in the snacking space are basically chips, dips, chocolates and cookies, right? Biscuits of course is large. We were very clear that we wanted to disrupt these 4 categories simply because if these are the largest categories, it means these are also the most loved categories, right? Which means I will never have to go ahead and educate the consumer what a potato chip is, or what a gourmet dip is, or what a chocolate is, right? But if I decided to sell kale chips, if I decided to sell immunity balls, if I decided to sell peanut butter, imagine the amount of consumer education that would need to be done.
So, tell us about the entire Shark Tank experience as well, and why did you go down that path, and how has life changed now?
So Shark Tank came along as a very, very interesting surprise, to be very honest. So how has life changed after Shark Tank? Yes, of course. At a very early stage, the brand has ended up receiving, the kind of eyeballs that it has. I think more than Shark Tank, possibly what we are excited about, and of course, sales has shot up, and all of those things. Our factories are bursting at its seams. We are running a 3-shift operation in all our facilities and still not able to keep up with the demand. But I'm not going to bore you with those details. I think the finest outcome that happened out of Shark Tank, in my view, is that we decided to do our consumer stock option plan immediately after Shark Tank. And we did this because, personally, a lot of our consumers started reaching out to us after Shark Tank saying that we also want to invest in the brand, in the company. And obviously, the ticket sizes weren't large enough, right? So as a private limited company, you can't necessarily raise capital from people with such small ticket sizes. But then what really, really struck me is that, if these 50, 100 consumers have come back and expressed their interest to invest, right, that is possibly the finest validation for a consumer brand. And that's when we opened up our consumer stock option plan for about a 10-day period. We got oversubscribed by 756%. We had 5,200 consumers who came back and invested in the brand. I feel...
And that's insane. Did you come up with this idea? Is there any global parallel of this? Where did you get this inspiration for a CSOP?
So see, crowdfunding has been around in the world for a very long time, right? In India, it has still been a relatively gray area because SEBI still doesn't say anything specifically about crowdfunding. I was just inspired by the consumer love, to be very honest, right? Because I personally spoke to at least 40, 50 of them, and I could sense that they were disappointed that they're not able to be a part of the journey because they love our products, right? And they would love to be a part of the journey, right? Yes, possibly wealth creation wasn't number 1 on their priority list while investing, but they just wanted to be a part of the journey. And I felt I just had to do something to make sure that we are able to take along as many people in this journey as we can. And our consumer stock option plan was possibly the finest validation of what we are trying to do. We're trying to keep the consumer at the core. We're trying to pick up consumer insights. We're trying to do consumer insights, which a lot of people end up ignoring, right, a lot of times. It is that love when it comes back. And today, when we share anything on social media, we have 5,200 consumers who share it for us, who are also investors, who are part of the journey, right? I don't know how many of you trade on the market, but I'm sure there are a lot of people here who possibly own shares of Hindustan Unilever or of P&G India, right? But then you got to be a part of that journey at a much, much later stage. And wealth creation opportunities as an investor were limited. But we are trying to create that from a very, very early stage.
So what's the vision for the brand now, and where do you see it going from here on? Now that you have the attention, you have a great platform, Launchpad, people know about this. Are there new products that you're looking at, new categories you're going to try and disrupt? What's the plan going forward?
So very clearly, Ankit, I think one of the things that we do well is that we don't do too many things. We don't easily get distracted. I think focus is the name of the game, because the only way you can execute well is by focusing and knowing what not to do, right? I think everybody knows what to do, but very, very few people know what not to do, and I think that is far more important. So we are not getting swayed by the sudden recognition that we've got. I think we're very clear. We decided we are doing chips, dips, chocolates, and cookies. We decided these categories with reasons in mind, and I think we want to stay focused on these 4 categories. Of course, you'll see a lot of new products for sure. You still don't, I'm not sure if any of you have experienced our dark chocolate cigars as yet, but the few limited early access launches that we've done, the dark chocolate cigars, people are just loving it, right? And why are we doing dark chocolate cigars? Because we believe too many young people today get introduced to smoking just because it's fashionable, because of peer pressure, right? What we're saying is have a dark chocolate cigar instead. You need not smoke it when you can eat it. And you can look forward to our hash cookies as well. I'm not going to speak much about them, but then I'm just going to leave a teaser here. So you will see a lot of innovative products coming from our stable, which will possibly end up addressing very distinct consumer needs that exist. But I think we are focused on a path to build a brand which is on a mission to make sure that urban consumers eat fitter, lead a more active lifestyle. I think these 2 things going hand in hand is very, very important. We spoke about Bhopal, right? So I grew up in a country where quality brands meant international brands. आज भी थोड़ा दिल को चुभता है. Want to change that very, very soon, and want to make sure that Tagz as a brand goes international. By the way, we've already gone international. We already sell in Dubai. We already sell in Kuwait. We are shipping to Kuwait, Thailand, and a bunch of other countries as well.
Awesome. So, you've told us about all the nice things. Now tell us about, what are the challenges? How are you dealing with day-to-day issues? What is it that you're going through, which obviously is behind all this, glamour, which the marketing does for you. But I'm sure at the back of this is like a very hard run operation, which is difficult to manage on a day-to-day basis. So what are some of your challenges that you'd like to share with us?
So Ankit, I'm going to be honest there. I'm really, really having a blast of a time. Okay.
No, I'm not saying you're unhappy.
And I'll tell you the reason for that. I think it's because I'm doing this for the second time. The first 5 years for any entrepreneur are very, very tough. Because of the emotional journey, nothing else, right? The number of times that you fail, the number of things that you try and they don't work, it just puts you down, right? It's very difficult to still hold fort and keep running with it. And I'll tell you why that happens. Our entire education system, our entire family system today in India basically programs you to be successful. Everybody is basically telling you that you need to be successful. Everybody's trying to be seen as successful. You work with a company, you want to be better than your peer group, right? You want to be better than your colleagues. Everybody is just trying to be successful. I think the early years should be all about failing as often as you do. So, what I would want to talk about is that it's been 10 years now that I've been an entrepreneur, and possibly now I'm very comfortable wearing those shoes, because I know that I will try 10 things and 9 of them won't work, only 1 of them will work, and that one thing I just need to double down on, right? And I just need to stay put till that time I hit that one thing which is going to work, right? Because for me, a lot of people will tell you running a startup is not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? I feel it is neither. I think it's a boxing match, 12 rounds, right? It is a battle of attrition. You will keep taking many, many punches, right? It's about whether you can keep standing or not. And wait for that opportunity when you will get that one chance to possibly hit back, right? So just mentally be prepared that you will have to take a lot of punches and possibly the journey will be a lot easier is what I believe, right? Maybe as a second time entrepreneur today, I'm a lot more mentally equipped because I know, yaar, ye sab karenge nahi chalega, right? But you have to keep trying. The kind of people that you're surrounded by, right? I think that plays a very, very big role. As long as we're not focusing on vanity metrics, a lot of times the journey becomes a lot easier. In fact, I'm not very comfortable being called a startup. I would love to call ourselves a small business, right? And I think because we work with a lot of these small business philosophies, life is good.
You spoke about philosophically how you've matured because of your second startup and how you look at it as a small business and how you deal with your team and what energy you get from them. But there's also some bit about hard skilling and upskilling yourself to stay relevant, because obviously the MBA that you did back in mid 2000s or early 2000s is a lot of it is not relevant anymore. A lot of things that you learned even during your jobs after that was not relevant anymore. And I mean, in order to try and help people be as relevant as possible, we've launched this, upskilling platform called AltUni. But I wanted to ask you, how is it that you are keeping yourself abreast with what is happening in the market? How do you know that you have the right skills to lead your team into the future?
Even before you figure out what skills to learn or where to learn it from, I think it is very important that you first understand what method of skilling works for you. I think at a very early stage, I learned that I can't learn from books. I can't learn inside a classroom, right? I'm always somebody who possibly learns a lot more by doing things, making my own mistakes, turning it around and pivoting it around and making it work. I possibly realized at a very early stage, I learn a lot faster when I'm learning from others. So as far as upskilling is concerned, I'm going to be very honest. I don't have the time to read books, to be very honest. Neither the patience. I think books, in my view, are increasingly becoming more and more irrelevant given the attention spans and time that we have on hand today. So I think in terms of how I continue to learn today is still doing my own experiments. Spot what is not working very, very quickly and change that around. And as far as reading is concerned, I possibly rely a lot more on journals, right? And contextual learning that I get from those journals rather than learning from courses or learning from books. Because I think what I understood very early on is that I don't extract so much from those learning methodologies.
Can we start having questions?
You started as a bootstrap business, right? Yep. So there are two school of thoughts here. One is bootstrap businesses like Zerodha and all. And one is they start right from VC funded money. So current ecosystem revolves around like if you are funded business, even if you don't need that funding, you are bootstrapping, you can go with your profits and your revenues, but you won't get that fame in this particular startup ecosystem. So what's your views on that? Like bootstrap business versus funded business?
I feel you answered the question yourself. If you're looking for fame, then that is not the right reason to build a business.
No, but fame also attracts eyeballs from crowd as well. Your customer acquisition will be easier for that.
I think first of all, you need to sit down, or anybody who's looking to build a business needs to possibly sit down and think about who is he building for, right? And what does he want to build, and what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind, with the business? I think if you're looking at building a business, if you're looking at building a brand, if you're looking at building a P&L, right? There are adequate and more ways available to make sure that you don't necessarily need to raise VC capital. Raising VC capital will possibly give you the headlines, every time you raise that capital, but it does not necessarily give you business success. I think it depends on what kind of a business are you building. So if you're building a business which clearly can potentially become, let's say, $1 billion business in a short period of 4 to 5 years, by all means go ahead and raise that capital, because that capital is what is going to give you that fuel to grow that fast, right? And the capital will give you that defensibility in a lot of cases. But then not everybody wants to build a unicorn, no?
So yeah, I had a question on consumer market or like FMCG goods. So being from a small town myself, in India, I think like if you go to a shop, no one will say, get me a bag of potato chips. They said, like, go and get me Lays. Or no one will say, get me a toothpaste. They'll say, like, go and get me Colgate. So how do you think this market is evolving? Is that notion disappearing anytime soon by, new age brands or something? Because I've seen, like, some brands, I would not name them, they'll, like, I won't say copy, but they'll try to mimic the packaging of Lays or packaging of Colgate or something like that, right? But do you think this notion is changing anytime soon, or do you think, like, how this market will evolve?
So you're talking about generic brands, and I think Lay's is a generic brand, Bisleri is a generic brand now in the country, right? There are so many of them. But let me also speak to you about the context in which a lot of these generic brands were created. These generic brands got created in an era when we were all brand starved. There were very few options, right? So I think most generic brands actually got created in fairly monopolistic market environments. I think that is something which is changing very fast. More importantly, what is changing faster than what we know is that consumer segments are possibly getting smaller and smaller. Earlier, maybe even 5 years ago, you could define India as India and Bharat, right? But I think that is changing much, much faster than any of us are possibly aware of it. So what's going to happen very soon is that you will possibly stop seeing one brand kind of dominate a whole market for a long period of time, right? And this is already happening in a lot of the other developed markets as well. Why do you see the Unilevers of the world and P&Gs of the world today acquiring many more companies? Simply because these large companies realize that it is impossible to build brands fast enough, relevant enough for these small micro segments at all points in time. It is possibly much faster to acquire a brand which caters to these kind of consumer micro segments. I think the era of mass markets is coming to an end faster than we know. You will see the emergence of very, very unique consumer segment focused brands. So yeah, there'll be multiple brands that will exist which will cater to different consumption occasions, consumption needs, consumer markets. Well, I think, let me give you an example. Possibly we have all grown up in an era where the owner of the car and the driver of the car were both using Nokia, right? That doesn't happen anymore, right? Or Maruti Suzuki was possibly driven by the driver and the owner of the car as well. But today you have different cars for different needs, for different segments.
I wanted to ask you about the pivot you spoke about, which is like a cusp. Would you say this ability to recognize the pivot is an innate ability or something that came about through experiences? Because very often, if we do not recognize the pivot, we could just stagnate.
I'm going to split this into two parts. So I think in my case, there was a combination of potentially some kind of innate ability to recognize an opportunity where I needed to turn things around. Obviously, that skill has improved considerably over a period of time with mental models that have gotten formed. But I have seen a lot of people acquire this as a skill and actually have frameworks to decide if the time is right for a pivot or not, right? But I think there are inherently a few key indicators which will always scream and shout, saying that the time kind of warrants a pivot. And what holds you back from making a pivot more often than not is fear.
Fear, absolutely.
I feel inherently entrepreneurs are a breed which are not afraid, right? So making pivots for them should not be very difficult unless they get obsessed with what they've created. So I think the challenge for entrepreneurs is the other way around. A lot of times they get obsessed, ki yaar, ye maine banaya, this is my legacy, this is my baby, I'm going to hold on to it, right? And some people struggle to let go of that. And hence I feel that a pivot as a decision should always be approached not emotionally, but passionately. And there's a thin line between the two.
I just wanted to know, when in the consumer market, you start to read the consumer insights, how do you decide upon the data points that you need to track to understand the consumer behavior?
If I understand the context, what you're saying is, how do I really understand what my consumer wants?
Correct.
Right? What the consumer wants, trust me, there is no data report that you can read. There is no white paper that you can read, right? And gather that consumer insight, right? That is how possibly investors understand markets, because they're not operators, right? But if you're looking to be an entrepreneur, if you're trying to go down the path of building a business and catering to a consumer need, then you possibly can't rely on data reports, or market share reports or any of those things. You possibly have to go down to the field and speak to consumers, understand what they really need, develop products for them, build out MVPs, put it out in the market as fast as possible, try and sell it at a price much higher than what you will possibly eventually be selling the product on, right? But then the learning is on the field. It is with the consumer. There are no data points or reports which will possibly help you.
So my question for you is, the food industry and the beverage industry in general is dominated by big brands, and they basically hold most of the market, right? So my question is, if not for Shark Tank and if not that episode hadn't happened in the company's journey, what would be your marketing strategy, or how would have you gone about disrupting the market, and how would you basically blow up the business is what I want to know.
There are again two parts to what you're telling me, okay? I think the first part that I recognize is, boss, this is a large market. This is a crowded market. There are big boys out there, right? I think somewhere in the last 10 years, while the ecosystem has matured a lot, right? There's a lot of investor money, there are a lot of startups out there. I think there is one area where we are going wrong. And I feel today everybody only believes that there's a business to be built in a white space, which is not the case at all. When I look at a large market, if it is a crowded market, I would love to chase down that market, because a large market, a crowded market means there's an existing market, right? There's a proven market. So unless I do harakiri, my chances of dying in that market are very, very limited. Whereas my chances of success are possibly much higher, because even if I can take out a 1% market share out of a large market, I've built a decent sized business. Technically, the snacking business is about 85,000 crores, right? I don't even need like a 1% market share of that to build a decent sized business, right? So that's part number one, right? Please stop assuming that there are businesses that you can build only in white spaces, right? Even in large crowded market, you will always find that there'll be a consumer segment whose needs are unmet. So if you decide to chase down that consumer segment and that unmet need, there's a business to be built, right? So see, regardless of Shark Tank is one of those things which happened for us. We were always very clear that as a brand, we are possibly catering to the top 30, 40 million households in the country. We are possibly catering to another 100 million households outside of the country, right? And the way to reach these guys is to be a digital first brand. So we didn't become a D2C brand because it was fashionable. We chose to be a D2C brand because we are catering to the top 30, 40 million households in the country, right? And for that, I just need to focus on my capital efficiencies. I need not necessarily be worried about what the big boys are doing. So वो किराने की दुकान में बेच रहा है, उसको बेचने दो ना, मैं उसके बारे में सोचता नहीं हूँ, right? I think about what is my market share on Swiggy Instamart, and on Swiggy Instamart we have a 5.28% market share, which is commendable for a early stage brand like ours. So we focus on the right channels. So maybe I'm going to go back and repeat what I said earlier. It's a lot more important to know what not to do than knowing what to do.
Awesome. That was phenomenal. I think we had an absolutely great time. Thank you so much for doing this. Guys, a big round of applause.
Performance marketing, e-commerce marketing, content marketing. Is this the world that you see yourself in? If you dream to work in these roles at Hindustan Unilever Limited, here's your chance. Apply to AltUni's certificate program in digital marketing with HUL. The participants achieved a return of 12 times the investment with an 80% average salary hike. Hurry up! Apply now to the program from the link in the description. Limited seats available.